This session here is designed to try to get the feedback from all of you on setting priorities for a major new research program, a so-called CGIAR research program. And this is part of a set of research programs that's being set up by the CGIAR. This one is led by IFPRI, with policies, institutions, and markets to strengthen food security and incomes for the rural poor. As you can see there, IFPRI is the lead center. As you also can see, we have, even with us here today, some of the other key centers who are partners, including ICARDA and World Fish. So this is very much a broad partnership, and not only with the CGIAR, but with partners around the world, and I'll get into that in a little more detail. The document for CRP2, the outline of work, has been developed really over nearly a two-year period now. So we started in about March 2010. There was an intensive consultation processes and a very heavy and detailed review process also through the CGIAR system, which hired external reviewers. We had a very large e-consultation in late 2010, as well as meetings and dialogues, for example, a major one in Addis Ababa in September 2010 to help guide this. So what you're going to be seeing here today in terms of the actual research objectives that I'm presenting have been developed over a long time, but they're based on really a global assessment of what priorities are. So this program was approved in December for a January 1st startup, so we're just now getting rolling. And what we need now, and what's so great about this session now, is to try to start this process of getting regionalized priorities. So what you're going to be able to do here is help us set the priorities for this research program for the MENA region through the process that we're going to be describing today. So it's a great opportunity for us, and I think it'll be very helpful for us in getting the research priorities right. One thing I'm very encouraged about is that both the immediate session just before lunch and also many of the presentations I heard are very much in line with the kinds of things that we're hoping to do in this program. So getting prioritization across the range of activities we have, again, is going to be incredibly valuable. And this isn't just an academic exercise. The results of this meeting, plus subsequent meetings that we're going to be having in Sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, and Latin America, are going to be directly feeding into the funding allocation and decisions on partnerships as we go forward late this year and into 2013 to develop the long-term program through the course of this year. So let me give you a very brief description of the process that we're going through today. And then after I do, Pascal Sabag here is going to give a much more detailed presentation just to get the details of how the voting will be going, how the different steps in the priority process are going. It might seem a little complicated at first, but I think you'll find as you get into it, it's very easy and allows you to directly register your preferences on priorities. So I'm going to briefly describe, give an overview of the research program in a moment. Then after that, Pascal is going to describe in more detail the presentation of the priority setting process, including the context, goals, principles, and methodologies. And that's going to include both your allocations of what are the most important goals or priority goals for this region, plus then how do the different research themes contribute to those goals, and she'll get into detail about that. To lead into that process also, we're going to have a presentation on development indicators for the Arab countries. It'll be done by Perihan Al-Rifai here. She's going to present that just to give you additional background and focus on what are some of the issues in this region in terms of food security, poverty, and hunger. Then after that, we'll start getting into a quick test voting just to get you familiar, ask you a few very simple questions, and the results will flash up immediately on the screen to give you some sense of how that works. Then we'll go directly into the more rigorous voting process, including first assigning weights to the objectives, like do you think that the goal of food security is more important, or participation by women, or reduction in poverty. After that, I'll come back and give a little more detail on the sub-themes of the CRP2 so that you can get a better flavor of what you're actually going to be voting on. So I'll show some more detail on that. Then we'll go in after some introduction again by Pascal. We'll go into a process where we'll be breaking up into 4 groups, and then you'll have some substantial time, about 45 minutes, to discuss the priorities in each of those groups, and then make your own decisions, individual decisions of what priorities are. Then after that, we come back into plenary and do one more sort of global assessment of priorities, and that will really be the end. I'll do a little summing up after that. So with that just brief introduction, let me just say a few things to describe this program. So I'll basically introduce the concept of the CRPs, talk a bit about the rationale for CRP2, an overview, discuss the research portfolio, impact pathways, partnerships, which we've seen as extremely important here, and then a little bit on budgets and implementation processes. So the so-called CRPs are really a new research instrument of the CGIAR system. They're aligned with a new strategy and results framework that was developed also over a very significant amount of time. And the idea is to get a more strategic approach by the system to achieve impacts on these system level objectives, and then integration of research, better integration and communication across the center, so in a sense to reduce possible competition or overlap. And there's a total of 15 of these CRPs, among which, of course, is the one we're discussing today on policies, institutions, and markets. We've heard all about some of the global food security challenges, and I won't go through this in detail, but I think it's interesting that I think every one of these items on this slide here has been mentioned more than once here in this meeting. So I think all of these key things from institutions and capacity issues to climate change and conflict, underinvestment in agriculture and rural development, natural resource constraints, particularly water in this region, lead to an incredibly complex food security challenge. And this program attempts to address some of these challenges, and again, as I said, tailored to this specific region. Just a little background again. I think probably you all know, and I heard it here also this morning, that poverty remains concentrated in the developing world in rural areas, and most of the poor do depend on agriculture, including many of the urban poor. Globally, there's about 2.5 billion people who are involved in agriculture out of about 7 billion people total. 75% of the poor globally are in rural areas, and based on various analyses and projections, that'll still be the majority out to about 2040 in rural areas. There's 900 million extreme rural poor, and this is based on the $1 a day poverty line that's used by the World Bank. It might be a little tight, I think a bit stricter than some of the national poverty lines that we've seen here. As you can see here, by this standard of $1 a day poverty, MENA, as you can see, is relatively well off with 5 million, only 5 million people in the rural areas. But as we've heard, and you all know here, that underestimates the total number of poor who are just above, for example, that $1 a day. As you can see, South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, and East Asia is where most of the rural poor are concentrated. And the other key thing about the focus on agriculture is the fact that agriculture has a much bigger impact on poverty reduction, agriculture growth for poor people than growth from non-agriculture. So when you still, especially when you still have a substantial amount of people in the rural and agricultural sectors, as we've heard in this region, the impact is much higher. If you see here on this one, on the horizontal axis, you have expenditure deciles from low to highest income, and then the expenditure gains by a 1% increase in either agricultural GDP growth or non-agricultural GDP growth. And as you can see, particularly on the low-income parts, on the left-hand side, agriculture has a much bigger impact on improvement in income and reduction in poverty than growth in the non-agricultural sector. So the strategic goal of CRP2 is to identify and promote implementation of policies, institutions, and markets to improve food security and incomes of the rural poor on a sustainable basis. And it has a number of objectives, including improving policies to deliver sustainable technologies to small-scale producers, enhance the allocation and effectiveness of public and private investment, improve macroeconomic, trade, and agriculture sector policies, better governance, and this is a big emphasis now on the governance issues that we heard so much about again this morning, for equitable access for the poor and women, for rural services, and a focus on property rights and collective action as well. Then increasing the competitiveness of markets to benefit producers and consumers, again a major emphasis I heard over the last 2 days, and offering greater incomes opportunities by integrating small-scale producers into upgraded and higher value chains. What are some of the new things in CRP2 we're doing? We're trying to push hard for country-led and country-owned development process, so that's again one of the reasons we're here, and this has been one of the major platforms of Schengen Fan since he became DG, that to get a much better participatory dialogue and continuation of that kind of initiative throughout the research process and the implementation process. We're also trying to look much more closely at the linkages across the topic areas. I'll talk a little bit more later about the integrated approach to gender analysis. And the idea, again, was stressed this morning, that this has to be managed and the research has to focus directly on impact in the countries on the poor. So again, this is not, it can use very high-level academic research, but eventually that has to be translated into impact pathways for the poor. We're also aiming at inclusive partnerships and strong collaboration, including with many of the institutions here in this room, and also a major new data strategy to upgrade access to data globally, particularly spatially disaggregated, high-resolution GIS data. There's 3 interlinked themes, as I mentioned. The first here is effective policies and strategic investments, and it's probably a little bit too small writing again. But so this theme 1 identifies the needed technology policies, investments, and safety nets, which then can feed into inclusive governance and institutions, while that theme 2 in turn, the governance and institutions, clarifies the feasibility of policy forums, shows how property rights, collective action, and asset patterns affect technology adoption. So there's that we have that interlinked feedback. And then theme 2 also shows how producer groups and control over assets can help small farmers participate in value chains. And here again, this is one of what the other key part of the program is, linking small producers to markets, including identifying market opportunities, product quality needs, certification, food safety, and so forth, and also helping to identify sector strategies, regulations, and investment to feed back into the effective policies. So we have a interlinked set of themes here. The research portfolio, and I won't go into detail on this now because I'm going to come back to this later, because what we are going to be prioritizing later is these sub-themes that you can see here. So under the first theme, we have foresight and strategic scenarios. How do you look forward to the future to look at resource allocations, macroeconomic, trade, and investment policies, production and technology policies, and social protection policies. In theme 2 on governance and institutions, we look directly at policy processes, governance of rural services, collective action on property rights, and institutions to strengthen the assets of the poor. Finally, in the linking small farmers to markets, we're looking particularly at innovations across the value chain and in-depth impact evaluation of how the impacts of upgrading. And again, I'll go into these in more detail later. We also have what we think is going to be a very strong program on research program on gender that cuts across those 3 themes to try to uncover broader lessons, collect gender disaggregated data, and collaborate not only with CGR but NARS, National Agricultural Research Centers, and with priority again on areas with high gender disparities, and with the goal of then developing context-specific strategies for women's engagement and outreach. State-of-the-art research approaches, I think I won't go into these in detail here, we can get at that later. Another key thing to look at is the impact pathways, and here, again, it is where we're stressing how the work done here has to feed to the down to the field. So starting from the left-hand side in the middle there, you have the research outputs and research capacity generated, which generate improved knowledge. And then in the first pathway, we go through communications programs, through public awareness, media, and the general public, and then on through to farmers, traders, and service providers. In the second sub-pathway on the top is one where we work much more closely also with the development community, stakeholders and advocates, including the extension services, NGOs, and civil society, to work through implementation of the development actions which are generated by the research process. The third is maybe more the traditional approach, looking through working directly from the research, collaborative research with policy analysts in the region through to policymakers, ministries, and then to policy changes as well. We'll have partnerships. We'll include research partners, obviously who work with us directly on the research, knowledge sharing partners who would help collect, share, and transmit knowledge, such as donor agencies, but critically NGOs and universities, and then policy and practitioner partners who really are going to be on the forefront in many cases of taking up the research outcomes. Again, that not only includes donor agencies, but also now farmer organizations and the private sector and other civil society organizations. Comparative advantage here that we hope to be able to build upon is established partnerships already. ICARD has major programs in the regions. The World Fish's work in Egypt. You see the kind of work that IFPRI has been doing here in this region as well, and many of the other centers. So we have those. We do have a track record. We have the work on this intersection of food security, poverty, and sustainable agriculture. And another great part is that IFPRI is mainly a social science and nutrition oriented institution, but then we also can build upon the expertise of our partners in biophysical, crop, and livestock and fish expertise. It's a very large network for data collection, analysis, and policy engagement, and has a focus on research-based capacity building. So again, that's all we hope going to lead to country-led, country-driven, and country-owned policies and strategies. Looking at the general order of magnitude of the program, again, we're still working on developing the full budgeting, but it's in good shape for this year. It looks like that essentially it's about an $80 million a year research program globally. In the beginning, a lot of this funding is from existing restricted bilateral projects, we call them in the system, that are already ongoing. But moving out towards 2012 or 2013, we move into significantly new resources that will be guided by the kind of allocations the kind of prioritization that we're talking about here. By theme in the lower left-hand corner, the biggest program is at theme 1 on policies in the institutions, but then theme 2 and 3 are about the same size, about 58 million, and this is over 3 years and 59 million. Then we have amounts for the strategic gender component and for management of the program. The centers, IFPRI has about a little less than 2/3 of the funding. Other centers have significant amounts as well. But the other thing to stress is that one of this money that you see here, like $80 million for the first year, 1/4 of that is going to non-CGI partners. So it's just that each of the centers is working directly with partners, and in the future we will be able also to have money given directly to centers under this, to other partners under this project. We're now just in the first year of the proposal. I already mentioned it was just launched just barely over a month ago. In the first quarter, we're developing the first round of agreements and contracts, governance bodies like a management team and an advisory committee, then moving into research. Then throughout 2012 is going to be the regional priority setting process in the monitoring, development of monitoring, communication, gender, and data strategies. So that's where we are now, and this is going to be our first case now of developing the regional prioritization process here. So thank you very much.